The Bird's Gift, A Journey to Freedom. Catherine sat by the window, staring out at the cold world beyond. Her long chestnut hair, once the pride of her childhood, was now tangled and unkempt. At 18, she was no longer the carefree girl she had once been. The death of her father had crushed her spirit, and now with the arrival of her stepmother, Veronica, and her stepsisters, Emily and Sarah, her life was a constant grind of chores, insults, and unrelenting work. She had lost her mother when she was just a child. The memory was vague, like a distant dream, but Catherine always remembered the warmth of her mother's embrace and the tenderness in her voice. But that warmth had long since been replaced by cold glares and harsh words from Veronica, who had taken over as the head of the house after her father's passing. Veronica had never liked Catherine. She found her beautiful, perhaps too beautiful and kind, which made Veronica's jealousy flare every time Catherine smiled or showed kindness. Catherine's stepsisters, Emily and Sarah, shared their mother's disdain. Emily, the older of the two, hated Catherine for her beauty, her grace, and the attention she received, while Sarah, more subtle, would whisper harsh things behind her back. Catherine had always kept her head down, doing the chores, cleaning the house, cooking meals, and serving them all without a word of complaint. But no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. One afternoon, after a long day of cleaning the house, Veronica called her into the living room. "Catherine," she said, her voice sharp and condescending. "Where is my necklace?" "The one I wore last week." "It's missing." Catherine's heart sank. She had not touched the necklace. She'd had no interest in it. But before she could speak, Emily burst in. "I saw Catherine looking at it earlier." "I think she took it," she shouted, her face twisted with false innocence. "What?" "No, I didn't." Catherine stammered, her voice trembling. But it was no use. Veronica's glare was icy, and Sarah just stood there, quietly watching, as if she enjoyed the spectacle. "Search the house, Catherine," Veronica ordered. "You better find it. If it's not found, you'll regret it." Catherine had no choice but to obey. She searched every room, every drawer, every corner of the house. She even looked under the furniture, her hands shaking from the stress and fear. The necklace was nowhere to be found. The hours passed, and Catherine's legs grew weary, her body aching from the endless searching. Her mind, too, began to fray, consumed by the thought that, no matter what she did, she would always be the one blamed for something she didn't do. Frustrated, exhausted, and on the brink of tears, Catherine fled the house. She ran to the river, the one place she could find peace, where the sound of the flowing water drowned out the accusations and cruelty. She sat on the riverbank, her head resting in her hands, the tears streaming freely down her face. As she wept, a soft rustling caught her attention. She looked up, blinking through the tears. A small bird, a robin, fluttered down from a nearby tree, its wings glistening in the moonlight. In its beak, it held something shiny. The bird hopped toward Catherine and dropped the necklace at her feet, its eyes gleaming with wisdom and purpose. Catherine stared at it, stunned and confused. The bird chirped, as though it were speaking directly to her, then took off again, soaring into the sky. In the distance, Catherine noticed something new, a path in the forest she had never seen before. The bird flew along the path, and Catherine, her heart racing, decided to follow. Perhaps it was a sign, a way out of the misery she had known for so long. The path led her deep into the woods, where the trees grew tall and thick, their branches weaving a canopy above her. The bird guided her, its small form darting between the trees, until it brought her to a humble, cozy cottage. The house was surrounded by a garden of wildflowers, and Catherine could hear the soft mooing of cattle and the gentle chirping of birds. An elderly woman stood outside, tending to the animals. She wore a faded apron and had a kind, weathered face, her eyes sparkling with a quiet wisdom. "Welcome, child," the woman said warmly, as if she had been expecting her. "I am Alara. The birds have guided you here, I see." Catherine, still in shock from the events that had led her here, could only nod. I don't know how I got here." "A bird." It dropped this. She held up the necklace, now tarnished and worn. Alara smiled, her eyes twinkling. The birds are good to those who listen to them. Come inside, child. Rest, and we will talk. Catherine followed her inside, her mind reeling from the strange turn of events. Alara's cottage was simple but warm. The smell of fresh bread and herbs filled the air, and the fire crackled softly in the hearth. Tell me, child, what brings you here? Alara asked, handing Catherine a cup of tea. Catherine hesitated for a moment before speaking. I'm lost. I've been treated cruelly. My stepmother and stepsisters, they hate me. They make me do all the work, and they accuse me of things I haven't done. I don't know what to do anymore. Alara listened intently, nodding with understanding. You've been through much, haven't you? But you've come to the right place. You've been given a gift, Catherine. A chance to choose a new path. Catherine's eyes widened. A new path? Alara nodded. I live here with my animals, my birds, and my cattle. It is a simple life, but it is a life of peace. You have a talent, Catherine, a gift for creating beauty with your hands. I've seen the way you work, the way your heart pours into everything you do. You could use that gift to start a new life. You could make jewelry, craft pieces like the ones you've always dreamed of. Catherine felt a flicker of hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. But I don't know how. I will teach you, Alara said gently. You will learn to craft jewelry from the earth, from the materials around you. And in time, you'll create things of beauty that will speak to others. Over the next few weeks, Catherine immersed herself in the work. Alara taught her how to make jewelry from silver, stones, and other materials they gathered from the land. Catherine's hands, once only used for cleaning and cooking, now created intricate designs, each piece infused with her emotions and creativity. The more Catherine worked, the more her spirit healed. She learned the rhythm of the land, tending to the cattle, feeding the birds, and working with the natural materials that surrounded her. The life was simple, but it was full of peace and purpose. As the months passed, Catherine's jewelry began to draw attention. People from nearby villages heard of the beautiful, handmade pieces she created. Soon, she was able to sell her jewelry, earning enough to support herself and Alara. The old woman, who had once been a stranger, became Catherine's mentor, guiding her not just in the craft of jewelry making, but in the art of living a life true to herself. One day, while Catherine was at the market selling her pieces, she overheard a conversation. A man was speaking about a young woman who had been wronged by her family, someone who had fled her home and started a new life. The man spoke of Catherine, though he didn't know her name, describing her beauty and the kindness that radiated from her work. Catherine smiled to herself. She had found her place, a life she had never thought possible. The birds, the cattle, the river, all had shown her a way to live that was gentle, peaceful, and true to her heart. And so, Catherine's new life began, a life free from the cruelty of her stepmother and stepsisters. With each piece of jewelry she crafted, she grew stronger, more confident, and more at peace with herself. And as the years passed, her name became known far and wide, not just for the beauty of her creations, but for the kindness and strength of the woman who made them. In the end, Catherine's story was not one of suffering or abuse, but of transformation, of finding her own way in the world, guided by the song of the river and the wings of the birds that had once led her to a new beginning.